His laugh exploded through the office like a slap across my face. I stood there, resignation letter trembling in my hand, while Trent Mallory leaned back in his expensive leather chair and actually slapped his knee like I'd told him the funniest joke he'd ever heard. You? Resign? That's adorable, Alyssa. The words burned worse than any insult he'd thrown at me before. He waved my carefully written letter away like I'd handed him trash. Where are you even going to go? Who's going to hire you? His smirk widened as he opened his laptop with deliberate slowness. He clicked a few times, making sure I could see exactly what he was doing. Then he said the words that would change everything. I'm reassigning Gable Tech. Effective immediately. You clearly can't handle accounts this big anyway. My biggest client. The one I'd built from nothing. Gone with a few keyboard clicks. My hand shook. My throat tightened. But something cold and sharp settled deep in my chest. Something dangerous. He shouldn't have laughed at me. He really shouldn't have done that. My name is Alyssa Hart. I was 33 years old and held the official title of Senior Account Strategist at Mallory Solutions, a mid-sized consulting firm in downtown Seattle. On paper, anyway. In reality, I managed accounts that generated nearly half the company's annual revenue while Trent handed promotions to men who golfed with him on weekends and laughed at his jokes. I worked late nights and early mornings. I fixed problems nobody else could solve. I saved accounts that other strategists had nearly destroyed through carelessness. And I never complained about any of it. I genuinely believed my work would speak for itself. I thought competence mattered more than office politics or playing games. I thought excellence was enough. I was completely wrong about all of that. Dead wrong. But I didn't know that yet. Not when this story began 3 years earlier, when I'd walked into Mallory Solutions fresh-faced, eager, and foolishly optimistic about corporate America. The first crack in my illusion appeared on a Monday morning during our weekly leadership meeting. We sat around the polished conference table reviewing quarterly wins and losses. I'd just closed a $14 million renewal with our second-largest client after 6 months of careful negotiations. The contract sat in our system with my signature on every single page. My name was listed as the primary strategist. The client had specifically thanked me in their final email. Trent pulled up the numbers on the screen, smiled warmly at everyone in the room, and said those dismissive words. Great team effort on this one, everyone. Not my name. Not my work. Not even an acknowledgement that I'd led the entire negotiation. Just team effort. My colleagues glanced at me with pity written clearly in their eyes. Nobody corrected him. Nobody spoke up to give credit where it was due. And something inside my chest broke just a little bit. I told myself it didn't matter. I convinced myself next time would be different. 3 months later, during our quarterly business review with clients, Marcus Ellery pulled me aside for a private conversation. He was the CEO of Gable Tech, our largest and most important account. We'd just finished presenting detailed growth projections for the next fiscal year, and Marcus asked to speak with me privately before leaving. In the hallway, safely away from Trent's watchful eyes and listening ears, Marcus said something I would never forget. You're the reason we stay with Mallory Solutions. You know that, right? His voice was quiet but intense. I honestly didn't know what to say. My mouth opened but no words came out. He continued before I could respond. Your boss doesn't realize what he has in you. This company would lose us tomorrow if you ever left. I thanked him awkwardly, brushed the compliment off like it was nothing, and thought nothing more about the conversation. But those words had planted a seed somewhere deep in my mind. A seed I didn't recognize yet. A seed that would eventually grow into something Trent never saw coming. The public humiliation came during a crucial board presentation about 6 months into my time there. I'd spent 2 solid weeks preparing a strategic pitch for expansion services we could offer existing clients. The board members sat around the massive table in their expensive suits, and I stood at the front of the room with my presentation loaded and ready. 3 slides into my carefully rehearsed pitch, Trent stood up abruptly, walked to the front, and took the presentation remote directly from my hand. "Let me handle the more complex parts of this," he announced with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. My voice died instantly in my throat. All my carefully prepared points evaporated from my brain like steam. I stood there frozen like a department store mannequin while he finished delivering my presentation to the board. He used my slides, my research, my recommendations. Just not my voice. The board members looked distinctly uncomfortable. Several shifted in their chairs. But nobody objected. Nobody defended me or questioned what was happening. I returned to my seat with my face burning hot and my dignity shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. 3 full years of working at that company. 3 women on the entire leadership team. 0 promotions for any of us during that time. When I finally gathered the courage to ask Trent directly about advancement opportunities, he gave me that practiced politician's smile that revealed absolutely nothing. "You're so incredibly good with clients, Alyssa. That's your natural strength. Strategy work requires a different skill set entirely." The translation was crystal clear even though he didn't say it directly. "You'll never move up here." I'd personally led accounts that generated 42% of total company revenue. I'd saved relationships that other strategists had nearly ruined through incompetence. I'd worked weekends, holidays, and countless late nights. And my reward for all that dedication was being told I wasn't strategic enough for advancement. The ceiling above me wasn't made of glass. It was solid concrete. And Trent held the hammer that kept it firmly in place. I finally understood that no amount of excellent work would ever be enough for him. That's when I started documenting absolutely everything. Not because I was planning some elaborate revenge plot. Not because I knew what was coming in my future. But because basic survival instincts kicked in hard. I saved every email where Trent took credit for my work. I kept detailed records of all my client conversations. I backed up project files to my personal cloud drive. I built genuine relationships with clients that went far beyond simple transactions. I made myself valuable directly to them, not just to the company that employed me. It wasn't calculated or planned. It was purely protective. But these small defensive actions became the foundation of everything that followed later. Sometimes preparation looks exactly like paranoia until the precise moment you desperately need it. Then it looks like genius. I was building an escape route without even knowing I'd need one. My subconscious was smarter than my conscious mind. It saw the writing on the wall long before I was ready to read it. The HR manager, Patricia, cornered me in the hallway one quiet afternoon when nobody else was around. She glanced nervously over both shoulders, then leaned in close and whispered urgently. "Be careful, Alyssa. You're too good at your job. That threatens him more than you realize." I actually laughed at first. The suggestion seemed ridiculous. I told her I wasn't trying to threaten anyone or compete for anything. She shook her head firmly, her expression deadly serious. "It doesn't matter what you're trying to do. It only matters what he thinks you might do. Men like Trent need to feel like the smartest person in every room." I didn't fully understand what she meant then. I genuinely thought competence was safe. I believed being excellent at my job would protect me from office politics. I didn't realize that excellence itself could be dangerous when your boss desperately needed to feel superior to everyone around him. I wish I'd understood Patricia's warning sooner and taken it more seriously. During a client strategy retreat in Boston, Marcus pulled me aside during the evening cocktail hour. We stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the dark harbor with city lights reflecting on the water. He said something that made my heart stop completely. "If you ever decide to change paths or build something of your own, reach out to us first. We might want to build something with you." I froze with my drink halfway to my lips. Was he serious about this? Was this some kind of elaborate test or trick? My brain spun with confused questions. He smiled like he could read every thought racing through my head. "I'm completely serious, Alyssa. Think about it. Then he simply walked away, leaving me standing there alone with questions exploding like fireworks in my brain. That single conversation lived rent-free in my mind for months afterward. I replayed his words constantly. I didn't know it then, but he'd just offered me the escape hatch I would desperately need. The lifeboat I didn't know I'd require. The breaking point arrived on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. We'd just finished a presentation to a potential new client, and it had gone absolutely perfectly. The client loved our proposal, our approach, our pricing. Back at the office afterward, Trent called me into his private space. "You didn't smile enough during the pitch," he said flatly, not even looking up from his computer screen. I stared at him in complete disbelief. "I'm sorry, what?" He leaned back in his chair and fixed me with a disappointed look. "Clients want warmth from their account managers. You came across as too serious. Too intense and cold. Work on that for next time." My face burned hot. My fists clenched hard under the table where he couldn't see them. I'd delivered a completely flawless presentation, secured preliminary approval from a skeptical client, and his only feedback was about my smile. About my facial expression. About being warm and approachable. That night, I went home and cried hard. Not from sadness or hurt feelings. From pure rage. From complete exhaustion. From knowing with absolute certainty that I couldn't stay there anymore. I wrote my resignation letter at midnight on a Friday when I couldn't sleep. My hand shook on the keyboard as I typed. I revised the letter 7 different times, trying desperately to sound professional when all I felt was white-hot anger. I'd given 3 years of my life to this place. 3 years of excellence, dedication, and unwavering loyalty. And I had absolutely nothing to show for it except constant disrespect and casual dismissal. The letter came out simple and professional. 2 weeks' notice. An offer to help transition all my accounts smoothly. Standard corporate language that revealed nothing of my actual feelings. I saved it to my desktop and stared at it for a full hour. Monday morning, I would walk into Trent's office and change my entire life forever. I just didn't know yet how dramatically everything would change. How that single moment would become the catalyst for something bigger than I could imagine. How his cruelty would accidentally gift me freedom. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and light rain. I printed the resignation letter on crisp white paper, walked to Trent's office, and knocked firmly on his door. He waved me in without bothering to look up from his phone. I placed the letter carefully on his desk right in front of him. He glanced at it casually, read the first line, and that's when the laugh came. That horrible, mocking, soul-crushing laugh that echoed off the walls and ceiling. "You're resigning? Oh, Alyssa. That's adorable. That's really cute." He pushed the letter back toward me like it was contaminated. "Where are you going? Seriously, who would hire you?" Then he opened his laptop with deliberate movements, made a few clicks, and smiled that cruel smile. "I'm reassigning Gabletech to Marcus immediately. You're clearly not ready for accounts that large and important. My biggest client. The relationship I'd built carefully from absolute nothing. Gone with a few keyboard clicks. Just to humiliate me in my final moment. Just to prove his power over me." Something inside me turned ice cold and diamond hard. I packed my desk in complete silence while coworkers pretended not to watch. People came by with sad faces and quiet hugs that said everything words couldn't. 3 women actually cried when I told them quietly that I was leaving. Nobody seemed even slightly surprised by this development. Everyone had apparently seen this coming except me in my naive optimism. I carried my cardboard box of personal items past Trent's office on my way out. He didn't look up from his computer. Didn't acknowledge my exit or say goodbye. I walked out the front glass doors into bright afternoon sunshine that felt almost offensive in its cheerfulness. I placed the box in my car trunk and sat in the driver's seat for 10 long minutes. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My breathing came shallow and fast. I'd just lost my job, my steady income, and my biggest professional achievement in one morning. But something else sat heavy in my chest. Something dangerous and thrilling. For the first time in 3 years, I was finally free. Day 1 of unemployment felt like falling and flying at exactly the same time. I woke up with no alarm clock, no scheduled meetings, no demanding boss. Just me, my laptop, and the absolutely terrifying question of what came next. I made coffee slowly and opened my computer. Stared at a blank document. The fear was completely real. Rent was real. Bills were real. Responsibilities were real. But something else was real too, sitting underneath the fear. I could build something. Something entirely mine. Something that couldn't be taken away by a man who felt threatened by my basic competence. The air in my apartment felt different somehow. Lighter. Cleaner. Full of dangerous possibility. I didn't have a concrete plan yet. Didn't have clients or income or even a clear direction. But I had something potentially better than any of those things. I had absolutely nothing left to lose. And that made me more dangerous than Trent could possibly imagine. Freedom is terrifying until you realize it's also powerful. 3 days later, my phone rang with an unknown number displayed. I almost didn't answer it. Alyssa? It's Marcus Ellery. My breath caught hard in my throat. The CEO of Gable Tech. My former largest client. How did he already know I'd left? News traveled fast apparently. I heard you left Mallory Solutions, he continued in that warm professional voice I remembered. I wanted to reach out to you directly and immediately. We're not happy about this transition to a new account manager. Not happy at all. He paused. We'd like to discuss working with you directly. No middle company between us. Just our company and you. Are you interested in that arrangement? My hand started shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. The universe had just cracked open a door I didn't even know existed. A door I didn't know I was allowed to walk through. I'm very interested, I managed to say without my voice shaking. Good. Let's talk about partnership. Real partnership this time. My heart pounded so violently I could barely hear his next words through the rushing in my ears. The meeting happened 2 days later at a quiet coffee shop in downtown Seattle. Marcus brought his CFO and head of operations with him. This was serious business apparently. They weren't interested in hiring me as a simple contractor or freelancer. They wanted something much bigger than that. We want to acquire your consultancy, Marcus explained calmly, like he was discussing the weather. I stared at him in confusion. Wait, I don't have a consultancy yet. He smiled warmly. Not yet, you don't. But you will soon. Form one properly. Build it the right way. We'll acquire it as a wholly owned subsidiary. You'll run strategy independently with full autonomy, and we retain you long term. It's a winning arrangement for everyone involved. The CFO slid a thick folder across the table toward me. Preliminary terms. Revenue projections. Equity details. Partnership structures. My hands trembled as I read through pages that represented everything Trent said I would never achieve. I couldn't speak. Couldn't process all this information. Could barely breathe normally. This wasn't just a job offer. It was ownership. It was validation. It was justice. I registered my consultancy the following week with shaking hands. Hard Strategic Solutions. The name felt powerful on the paperwork. I found a small co-working space with exposed brick walls and beautiful natural light. I created a professional website, a detailed business plan, and a clear vision statement. Every single step felt completely surreal. I was building something real from absolutely nothing. Something entirely mine that nobody could take away. The paperwork felt overwhelming at times. The business licenses, the liability insurance, the bank accounts. But beneath all that administrative stress lived something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Pure, uncomplicated pride in my own work. I took photos of my new office space with my phone. Sent them to exactly nobody. This moment was private and mine alone. And for the first time in 3 long years, nobody could take credit for what I was building. Nobody could steal my ideas or claim my successes. This belonged to me. Only me. The feeling was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. 2 months later, Gable Tech officially signed the acquisition agreement in a conference room with actual lawyers present. My consultancy became their exclusive strategic partner with a 3-year contract. The dollar amount made my hands shake violently when I signed my name. It wasn't just enough money to survive. It was enough to thrive. Enough to hire a real team. Enough to prove Trent wrong in the most permanent way possible. The contract included something else particularly sweet. Exclusive rights to all Gable Tech strategic work. Every project, every initiative, every planning session. The same account Trent had stripped from me out of pure spite was now mine again. Not as an employee who could be dismissed. As an owner with a signed legal contract. The account represented exactly 42% of Mallory Solutions' total annual revenue. I didn't plan to destroy Trent's company deliberately. But I knew this would hurt him badly. And I felt absolutely zero guilt about any of it. He'd laughed at my resignation. This was simply consequences. The collapse at Mallory Solutions began with quiet whispers and concerned questions. I heard through former colleagues who still worked there that investors were asking pointed questions. Why did Gable Tech suddenly pull their contract? Where did 42% of projected annual revenue disappear to? Who was responsible for this disaster? Leadership scrambled desperately for convincing answers. Then the numbers started dropping across the board. Client confidence wavered noticeably. Employee morale tanked. And Trent? According to multiple sources, he was suddenly very, very quiet. The arrogance vanished overnight. The swagger disappeared completely. Reality was setting in hard. He'd laughed at my resignation like it was a joke. Stripped my biggest client out of pure spite and cruelty. And that single act of vindictive cruelty had triggered a cascade of consequences he never saw coming. I should have felt satisfaction or triumph. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of men who consistently confused power with actual competence. Tired of people who thought titles made them untouchable. Justice felt quieter than I'd expected. The emergency board meeting happened 3 weeks after Gable Tech's official departure. Someone who still worked there sent me a detailed text describing the complete chaos. Trent had apparently slammed his fist hard on the conference table and accused me of stealing the client. Of poaching. Of corporate espionage and sabotage. His face was red and his voice was shaking, according to my source. The legal team had to quickly correct him in front of everyone. Gable Tech had every legal right to choose their own partners. I had signed no non-compete clause. Everything was completely legal, properly documented, and airtight. There was nothing he could do. He had nobody to blame but himself and his own actions. His own arrogance had created this disaster. His own cruelty had pushed away the person who'd protected his most valuable business relationship. The board members sat in uncomfortable silence, and according to my source, one of them finally asked the only question that really mattered. How exactly do we recover from this? Nobody had a good answer. Investors started pulling back their support. Not immediately or dramatically. But the quarterly investor calls got increasingly tense and difficult. Revenue projections dropped steadily. Growth forecasts shrank. Mallory Solutions went from rising star to struggling survivor in less than 3 months. Word spread quickly through industry circles the way bad news always does. Whispers at conferences. Quiet conversations over drinks. Trent's leadership was being seriously questioned. People asked what really happened behind closed doors. How did they lose their single biggest client? How did they let their best strategist walk away? The narrative shifted dramatically. Trent went from respected CEO to cautionary tale about poor leadership. He started skipping industry events where people might ask questions. Stopped posting on professional networks. The man who'd laughed at my resignation was now actively hiding from the consequences of that laughter. His reputation was crumbling. And there was nothing he could do to stop it from happening. Arrogance is expensive when the bill finally comes due. When quarterly financials released publicly, the numbers told an absolutely brutal story. For the first time in company history, Mallory Solutions posted significant operational losses. The board moved quietly but decisively behind closed doors. There was no dramatic public announcement. No press release about firing. Just a simple update on the company website 3 months after I'd walked out. Trent Mallory had stepped down to pursue other opportunities. An interim CEO would lead the company during this transition period. I read the announcement twice, feeling absolutely nothing. No triumph or satisfaction. No vindication or joy. Just a quiet acknowledgement that arrogance eventually destroys itself. He'd lost everything because he'd underestimated one person. Because he couldn't imagine a world where the woman he casually dismissed could succeed without him. Because his ego was more important than good business. That miscalculation cost him his entire career. And I didn't feel bad about it. Not even a little bit. Sometimes people create their own consequences. Sometimes justice serves itself. Meanwhile, my consultancy grew steadily and deliberately. I hired my first employee with careful consideration. Then my second and third. All women who'd been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed by men who felt threatened by basic competence. We worked initially from my co-working space, then moved to a proper office with a real conference room and a full kitchen. We secured 2 more major contracts within 6 months. Not through aggressive sales tactics or undercutting competitors on price. Through reputation. Through word of mouth. Through consistently delivering excellent work and treating people with genuine respect. Revolutionary concepts, apparently. Every single morning, I walked into an office I actually owned, leading a team that genuinely valued me. Some days I still couldn't believe this was my real life. That I'd built this entire thing from nothing. From a moment of public humiliation and a CEO's cruel laughter. That his worst moment had accidentally created my best opportunity. Success is the best revenge, people say. They're absolutely right about that. 6 months after leaving Mallory Solutions, I attended a major industry conference in Chicago. The event was massive, filled with professionals I'd known for years. I was presenting on a panel about strategic partnerships and long-term client relationships. During the lunch break, I saw him across the crowded hotel ballroom. Trent. He looked physically smaller somehow. Older. Diminished. His shoulders curved forward in defeat, and his suit didn't fit quite right anymore. Our eyes met for half a second. Recognition flashed across his face. He looked away immediately and walked quickly in the opposite direction like I was contagious. I didn't approach him. Didn't need to say anything or confront him. The success spoke louder than any words ever could. His arrogance had systematically destroyed his career. My competence had built mine from the ground up. Justice didn't need a dramatic speech. It just needed time and truth. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. Sometimes success is enough. I turned back to my conversation and forgot he even existed. Today, Hart Strategic Solutions partners with 4 Fortune 500 companies and growing. Gable Tech's acquisition remains the foundation of everything we've built together. We've expanded into 3 new markets, hired 12 full-time employees, and maintained a spotless reputation for excellence. Trent lost his company, his reputation, and his entire career because he laughed at someone's worth. I gained everything because I never stopped knowing mine. In the end, I learned one permanent truth about success and revenge. When someone openly mocks your value, don't argue. Don't fight for respect you'll never receive. Don't beg for recognition from people determined to deny it. Just leave. Build something better. And let your success answer every single insult they ever threw at you. That's not revenge. That's justice. And it tastes so much sweeter than any argument ever could. My company thrives. Trent faded into irrelevance. And every morning I wake up grateful he laughed. That laugh set me free.